purpose is your daily compass, and it helps you to track your progress and make sure that you are on the right path. So today we are going to talk about purpose in a very broad sense, but also what purpose can bring to your life, so you are more not just purpose driven, but more certain about, hey, what is it that I want to do? Because without purpose, we run the risk of trying to fill the void because we don't know what else to do. And filling the void can lead to things like addiction and other things that we don't want to happen. So hence why we are talking about purpose. And before I start talking about purpose, let me share a little story with you. So earlier this week, I was like, okay, I need to get things back in order again. So I don't really need the professional association, but that doesn't mean that I cannot benefit from being part of a professional association. But up till now, the things that they needed from me, including talking to my colleagues, which we call intervision, it just didn't seem to work out. I couldn't find any other people, or better said, other groups other groups I could join. I didn't know where to find them, including on the net, using the professional association. I just couldn't find it. And then all of a sudden it was there. I started asking the AI from the professional association, and well, I found the map. I looked at the map and I started sending all these emails to people. And what do you know? Someone wrote to me and she said, yesterday evening, someone canceled on us. We need a third person. Can you be that third person? I said, yeah, sure. So let me know in time, because then I'll be there in time. And for the first time, actually, they had a meeting in person, and I actually had been looking for a group which would do their meetings online. Little did I know that normally they actually do this stuff online, but this time around they decided to meet in person. So here I was, and it was actually, well, sometimes it takes one to know one. And well, you probably know by now that my purpose has to do with neurodivergent people and making sure that they find perspective in their life. And well, I want to set up a hub, a meeting place, which is made for the neurodivergent, especially the young ones and the children, but also the business owners. And it's also done by neurodivergent people who have more experience in that area, so they can help the ones who are new when it comes to understanding why people react differently to them and what they can do in order to speak up with clarity and intention and actually be understood. So that's the first thing that we're going to talk about, which is purpose. Yes, the daily compass. So we talked about who was going to drive, and she said, will I pick you up? I said, yeah, sure. But the first time around, she mentioned a city where I know that it's hard to park. It's also paid parking. And I actually have the luxury of parking there for free when I'm parking in the streets. So then later she said, well, actually, it's a different location. I said, okay, so which one is it? And well, my car drives on LPG, her drives on electricity. So I said, okay, you've topped me. So since we didn't need to worry about where to park, it was relatively easy. She wanted to go and drive in her car. And here was the funny thing, and we noticed it the moment that we got to talk to one another, driving to that meeting. Both of us are on the spectrum. We like our structure. We like knowing what to expect. And that's why I like to drive in my car and she likes to drive in her car. Now, I don't mind being a passenger because that way I get to see other things that I normally don't see because I'm focusing on the road and what's happening on the road. But it was so interesting what was happening and how our conversation was developing. So before I knew it, we were talking about the neurodivergent people, so people who think differently because their brain is wired differently. And yes, both of us have a background in IT, so it made total sense. So we were kind of hyped when we got there, and I got to meet the third person. She isn't in IT. She's a different kind of therapist than I am, and she knew or knows the other person I was driving to the meeting with from that education to become a orthomolecular therapist. So that has to do with food and supplements. And well, mine is based on energy. And of course, nowadays I guide a lot of clients. So I coach some and some I actually guide on a daily basis. So they learn to speak up and they see that they can get perspective. So I'm sort of starting their battle for them because they don't see any perspective anymore. And then they get to see and observe how I do certain things. And slowly but surely, they get self-esteem, more self-esteem, and they realize what they actually can do. And I have to say that seeing my clients, especially the younger ones, grow and blossom, it's amazing. I cannot say anything else. And yes, that's at the base of why I want to create that hub. And well, then we get back to the purpose. So our daily compass. Now, when I got to talk to the two ladies and we got in this meeting, it's no wonder that we got to talk more about the whole neurodivergent aspect. So she wanted to know what's neurodivergent, what's neurotypical. I explained it. And they got to talk about how they see certain things. And it was quite interesting because we got to talk about how certain foods have influence on the brain. For instance, when we look at fish oil, that actually helps against brain fog. Of course, I can talk about chocolates and all the other stuff, and raising the energy. But when we talk about focus, and especially about brain fog, then yes, they know which supplements are very important. And actually, we all knew a certain supplier, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. Now I can finally ask my questions about that. So what it was doing, it was helping me to progress in my purpose. So the purpose leads to progress. So how are you going to continue on? So you have your goal, and which of course is related to giving perspective to the neurodivergent people out there. And what I noticed, because I was talking to them, was that suddenly things were shifting. Because I was talking to them, they also gave me different angles. I got this confirmation about the importance of helping out, especially the young ones who are still going to school and who at some point run into internships and not being able to complete the internships. And that was, whether they knew it from a professional level or from a more personal level, they got it. And when I shared my battles with them, especially the recent battles I am facing, which have to do with the master studies. So a number of you know that I have been so excited about being the expert by lived experience. But here's the thing, whereas the teacher wants me in there and she totally believes in me, and she also knows why I didn't get my bachelor, well, the one that's approved by the ministry, instead of the one that is at the same level, but then I have become a therapist, which had to be acknowledged by the healthcare insurance companies and also by the ministry at some point. So they came up with something which is on top of it, and they call it either Plato or CPION. And there are two directions for it. One has to do with medical basic knowledge, and the other one is more on a psychological level. And because I started out as a fitness trainer, medical fitness trainer, sport masseuse, it made sense for me to do the medical basic knowledge. By the way, I also became a coach at some point. So yes, there has been this pull to also do that psychological part. So because I am sort of, well, I get invited by the teacher to actually follow the program, and then I got kicked out by the student administration. And well, the teacher is now going to talk to whoever is in charge, with whatever CEOs there are, to make sure that I can actually join. But here's the thing, I could have done a test, but I had to have done it in the previous month. So because student administration didn't want to cooperate, it didn't work out. But this is the basic thing that not just me, but other neurodivergent students and people are running into. So to a degree, we can finish high school. Some don't even finish high school, or they downgrade to a level that's easier. Why? Not because they don't have the know-how to do it. Well, actually, they don't have the know-how. So they have the smarts to do it, but they don't know how to learn. And that causes conflict. So I've said it before, but I'll use the example again. I remember taking a French exam, and at first I had like what you could call a D minus or something. It wasn't good. And then the teacher said to me, how about if you just do it more in a more simple manner? And then all of a sudden I had an A plus or something. So I did really good. It wasn't that I didn't know my French grammar or the words. It was just that I wanted to do too much and say too much in one sentence, and that didn't work out for me. Now, if we move forward, I went to the Academy of Arts, and in the last week of the second year, I was told, you're not going to go to the third year. And for me, and this is also typical for a neurodivergent person, it meant that I had to leave the house because my parents always said, especially my dad, if you flunk the class, then you are going to leave the house. So I didn't even think about finishing the school. Well, actually, I did think about it. I went to this agency who knew about what directions I could take when it came to work later on. And I wanted to know if I was going to invest another 3 years going to the Academy of Arts, or if I would go into IT, which I already had done prior before going to the Academy of Arts. It became the latter. I started working. Like 3 months later, I got my own apartment. I got my driver's license. And so, yeah, going back, returning to the Academy of Arts wasn't in the plans anymore. But what I did do was still learning on, because we all were former students. I did go, but I did more things on a modular level, and that was okay too. There was a specific line that I specific direction that I wanted to follow. I did, and then I got stuck again, because no matter how often I studied the material, I knew the material, I'd lived it. But that was also the problem, because I'd lived it, my perception was different from what they wanted to hear. So didn't work out. And that's when at some point I decided to start to understand my body, because dealing with hypermobility, I wanted to know, okay, why is this happening? Why are people not understanding me? And what do I need to do in order to actually move ahead? So back then, my priorities were focused on learning to understand hypermobility. But if we look at this story, my priorities are more aligned with the follow-up, as in, hey, I want to be the go-to expert for neurodivergent young ones, because guess what? Hypermobility and neurodivergence, they seem to align. A lot of neurodivergent young ones actually have problems with their joints. So, hello, I know what that's about, and I know what it's like not to be believed, because the majority of people don't experience those same things. So something needs to change, which gets us back to the priorities. Thinking about it all, uploading the reports from the meeting. By the way, I love the meeting, in case you wonder. I also introduced this one to them, which is Jumping Bunny. For those who don't know, I'm sorry for adjusting the camera. So Jumping Bunny is my inner child. And well, a lot of people, the moment that they see her, they already get an impression of what kind of person I am. So I don't give up easily. I keep on going. And by the way, she's also like a safety net for me. So she lets me know when she's not happy. So when something happens and it doesn't feel good, it's like there's this boxing going on. So that's Jumping Bunny telling me, like, hey, I am not happy with what you're doing. So that's the inner kid in me saying so. And well, she's very good at getting my attention. And that means that I can't focus anymore. So I have to speak up, basically. So here she is. Now, I'm used to typing reports, listening to things, and it felt good to be in this group. And really look at things if we were on the same page, all those kind of things. And when I uploaded the whole thing, I noticed something that was listed there, and I knew what it was about. It had to do with me being, well, I'd fallen back as to what needed to be uploaded. And that had to do with my priorities, as in, do I actually need to be part of this professional association or not? Now, my previous experiences with other professional organizations were, first of all, that it was a lot of hassle. Second of all, I always had to drive and over an hour just to get somewhere. And apart from that, it was like, okay, I was there, I was listening to things, and it was completely not interesting for me. I just signed up because, well, we needed to do some extra training, get some education, but that was it. Now, all of a sudden, I was talking to two ladies who maybe were different kind of therapists, but hey, it did all link together. And that was really, really interesting. So my priorities started to shift. So where I actually had said, I want to improve certain things so I can get that seniority level back again. So I have the seniority level, but people won't be able to get paid by the health insurance company. Now, I won't ever ask them to do it through the health insurance company. It's simply too much of hassle, and I get paid differently. So, especially being the one who guides clients locally. So that's not what is interesting. But meeting up and seeing also that there are different courses nowadays, everything suddenly shifted. Now, you remember that I talked about not knowing whether or not I will be admitted to the master studies. So again, teacher says yes, administration says no. Welcome to the life of a neurodivergent person. I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to do something else. So if you remember, I said, you can also do something which is on top of being a therapist, which is needed by the ministry and the health insurance companies. I chose back then for the medical component, and I was considering also doing the psychological part. And now I was like, I've got a very good reason to also do the psychological part. Why? Because when I do additional training, they actually, some are specifically for the medical basic knowledge, the other ones for the psychological, and there are a few who actually combine both. And I was like, you know what? Let's be smart. If one doesn't go through, then I can do the other one. It's about 3 months or something, maybe 4. That's doable. So I said to myself, and that's a promise I'm going to give to you, that in order to be the best one for that hub and to set up that foundation, I am going to make sure that I get that status back again. I just want to be the best one I can be at a professional level. And now I have reason to do so. And well, call it coincidence or not, call it serendipity or not, we got to hang out and it worked really well. Now, there are more things that I'm going to do, but going back to the whole idea behind purpose, progress, priorities, and promise, let me ask you, do you know what your purpose is? And I'm going to take a little sidestep now. At the beginning, I said something about the importance of knowing your purpose versus filling a void. And here's the thing. A lot of people, they have a family, so their purpose is to raise their children, to be loving, understanding children who have a chance in society. And, well, I assume they can be proud of their children. I mean, I assume most parents would want that. But their responsibility lies in teaching them how to I'm looking for a specific word and I can't find it. How to navigate, that's it. How to navigate society. Like I said, when it comes to the neurodivergent ones, ooh, that's a challenge. Hence why I'm the one who says I'm going to do that for the neurodivergent ones. Create a hub, teach them what they can do, but also find a place where they can be themselves and be acknowledged for who they are. There are also people who are really focused on making a career, whether it's as a business owner or an employee, which works until they have accomplished what they wanted to accomplish, or they are going to retire, or they've sold their business, and then what's next? Same with what if your children are adults and they leave the house? What are you going to do next? And that's when purpose can get lost. And I recently talked to this man. He's a 90-year-old man. And he said when his wife had died from cancer, he was lost. He didn't know how to cook or do anything. And he was like, I need purpose again. It was very interesting because this man had always been a business owner, and he had been into plumbing, and he said, but the way it was done back in the days, so you knew something about everything. You could do basically everything which had to do with plumbing, whether it was the roofs or the kitchens or you name it. I got what he said, and what he did very well was networking. And well, since we're both business owners, we immediately clicked. That was very nice. So purpose is something that helps you drive forward, hence progress. And ever since I said I want to become the go-to expert for neurodivergence, which I said earlier this year, things have really changed for me. And I have to say, I am really beginning to see progress. I'm catching up on things I didn't do before. A lot of things are changing. My priorities are changing. I'm focusing on the things that I need to do and I want to do. And I'm really not just focused, but it really feels good. It makes sense. It's like I'm getting energized. I want to do this instead of I'm feeling obligated to do this. That's a very big difference. Now, to move ahead, because I have a different framework too, which, yes, links back to purpose. When we talk about purpose, that's often related to your story. And I'm going to ask you some questions now. So first of all, when I started talking about what your purpose is, do you have a purpose, or are you someone who's filling the void? So you don't know what else to do. So you are gaming, maybe making phone calls, but you are not really working towards something. So the question is what is your story? Because usually your story, so what you have encountered, that's usually what shows you what your purpose could be. So hence the question, do you know what your purpose is? And if I talk about progress and priorities and even about the promise, do you feel like there's any progress in what you think your purpose is? And if not, then let's take a look at the story. So I told you one of the stories, and this is a very recent one, why I help out the neurodivergent. Well, some of them are my age actually, but I've also helped a lot of young ones out there who got stuck at school, who got stuck with their employer, they got stuck doing internship. And it's led to them saying, if this doesn't change, I'm going to opt out. So that's usually when they find me. So it's word of mouth. And so one tells the other one. Usually it takes a couple of years, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, I need your help. So there I am. So when we talk about story, I had to learn to speak up. At first I couldn't. I didn't know. I felt differently compared to other people. I often felt that I didn't fit in, but the reason why, that was unknown to me. So the first thing I started doing at some point was finding out why physically things didn't align and what was going on. And that's when I found out that I am hypermobile, and I'm still convinced it's also EDS. So that's Ehlers and Danlos. Those were the doctors, and Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, both of them figured something out at the same time, which had to do with hypermobility. And linked to it are a slew of other things. So I'm not going to get into those things right now, but let's say the combination have me learn to speak up. And so hence my story probably can be linked back to, well, if I have to think about the most challenging moments, what's going on right now with the master's studies, that's one. But there are two other moments which really have made an impression on me. One was when I got stuck outside of the airport and I couldn't get in because I was holding crutches, and the one who dropped me off didn't bother to help me out to go into the airport. So I literally had to scream for attention, for someone to help me out. And yes, that worked. That worked out. But yes, I literally got stuck at the airport. That's for another time. You can also find it on YouTube, Lady Lexi Speaks Up. And there's the one where I was facing this panel of doctors who didn't believe that something was going on with me. That was before they actually did the first surgery. And then, of course, there was a second surgery. But before someone believed me, oh my, that took me years, and a lot of energy and a lot of support from someone else, a very dear friend. And well, nowadays I'm helping her out with her neurodivergent children who are also facing their own struggles. And yes, I'm helping her out too. So basically we help out one another. So when we talk about your story, then usually, because it's also linked to purpose, it follows that there's a certain strategy which is linked to it. So we talked about purpose and plans and goals, and how to make progress. But before you can prioritize and actually talk about progress, the question, of course, is what is your strategy? And well, I have about 4 different ones depending on what we're talking to. I mean, I want to make sure that my education is up to par and my skills as well. Now, since I guide people and I do a lot of things over the phone, that part usually is up to par. But when it comes to understanding people, I recently did another follow-up on a PTSS course, which gave me more information, and I could talk to some of my clients about the things that they actually experienced and why they experienced it. So it helped me to explain things a little bit better and to make them understand what was going on. Now, there's also the part which says I'm going to set up the hub. But in order to set up a hub, I need to set up the foundation. And how am I going to do that? With the board members, the bank, the volunteers. There's so much involved when it comes to setting up a foundation. And by the way, I want to be the ambassador. I'm not going to be a board member. So let's be clear about that one. And when we talk about the other things that I want to do, I also want to not just help rewrite the inner story of basically all people who don't trust themselves or don't dare to speak up or don't know how do we say it, position themselves in society, because, well, their self-esteem, it got, someone was there in their life, or a lot of people were there in their life, and they gave them a feeling that they weren't worth enough. So when you don't feel good about yourself, you don't believe in yourself, you're basically telling yourself the story, or better said, the stories that other people told you, and then at some point you incorporate those stories and you start to believe them, and then you start telling them yourself. So that's why I have this 7-day challenge, Rewrite Your Inner Story. It's a free challenge. It's there for a limited amount of time, but it's there to really think about, hey, what are my convictions? And what am I telling myself? Because if you don't feel you're worthwhile, or you cannot set up a hub, or whatever it is that you want to do in life or achieve, and you don't believe that you are worth anything at all, then, well, basically that's when we get to filling the void. And lots of times it can lead to addiction. Nowadays we have the addiction to games, but then there's, of course, the addiction to booze and to pills and self-harm is also part of it. There's a lot of things that you can be addicted to. I just mentioned a few. But, well, once you are addicted, then of course, how can you change it? And a lot of things also have to do with purpose. That's apart from chemical addiction. That's a whole different story. Now, I'm thinking about improving my knowledge, working with business owners, working on the foundation, and then there's that professional level that I want to get back at. So yes, I'm senior, but even though it's not necessary, it's nice to actually have it registered in the system that I do know my things, and I'm, like I said, I'm up to par. Here's the thing, here in the Netherlands, CHPC is not seen as something that is, well, they don't acknowledge it. So that's a shame, because I believe that being a certified high performance coach is really a high standard when it comes to, for instance, courage or confidence or productivity or how to talk to other people. There's so much involved in being a CHPC. But since I'm in the Netherlands, I still have to deal with what they want here in Holland. And like I said, I got to, since I met those people and I saw the other courses that are out there, I can see why it makes sense now. So we were talking about story. Yes, I wrote all the things down. We talked about strategy, and then we get to the steps. So when you know what it is that you want to do, there are steps involved. And when it comes to knowledge, well, I already said, if I can do the masters, then I'm probably going to do 3 or 4 months elsewhere, where I can get the psychology basic knowledge. I already know a lot of stuff. But for the health insurance company, it's an extra validation. And for the masters, actually, because I don't have the bachelor, but when I have those two combined, they need to take me seriously and look at my experience. So that's actually something that is really going to work out really nicely. So now, in order to get things done, it's important to get the right support. So if you know your purpose, you believe in your purpose, you know what it is that you want to do, so you know your strategy, then you likely will need support. And a lot of support comes from the AIs nowadays, but also a lot of support comes from my friends, and a lot of support comes from the teacher that I was talking about. So support can come in many ways. The 2 ladies I got to meet, that's also talking about support, and that support is needed if you want to follow up on steps. Because I met those 2 ladies, I was really like, okay, yes, I'm going to really catch up in all those things that I want to do. And one of the reasons that I basically got back into everything is because when I did talk to the professional association, I was already aware that I needed to catch up on some stuff. And that's why I actually started doing the PTSS course, the training. But it conflicted with some other things, and I didn't know which one to give priority. And well, now I do. So that's when we get back to experiencing the progress, which I did by meeting up with those ladies, and actually everything's starting to align. Literally everything is aligning. And well, that's what gets you to your priorities and steps. So I asked you before to write some things down. And the first question was, do you know your purpose? And what are your plans and goals? Now, if you don't know your purpose, then we go to that part which says, okay, maybe it's time to start aiming for purpose instead of filling the void inside of you. So basically not knowing what to do with your time, and then all of a sudden a day has gone by, a week has gone by, a year has gone by, and what did I do? So if you don't have specific plans or goals, then you can already wonder, okay, what's going on with the purpose? Now, I will say that I did have my plans and my goals, But this purpose of becoming the go-to expert for neurodivergent people, it has taken me a long while before I actually got there. And hadn't I experienced all these things as a result of the hypermobility, and in 2014 I tripped on a brick, I twisted my ankle, I tore a ligament, and a bone got on the loose. If that hadn't happened, I probably wouldn't be talking to you about all of this, because it showed me the importance to be able to talk to the medical staff or the medical people, and at the same time also translate what's going on with the patient, or in my case, the client. And so the next question is there progress in your life? And if so, what do you experience? For me, meeting up with those ladies, literally sending out this email and getting an answer the next day and realizing, okay, this is going to be tomorrow. How am I going to know that they want to meet up, and at what time and where? So it was very last minute, and all of us were surprised. So now, when we talk about progress, does it link to your purpose, your plans, and your goals? So for me, knowing that I want to be the go-to person for the neurodivergent people out there, I was like, okay, I need to set up the foundation. I am going to create a hub. Then I realized that I could, I'm sorry, I need to check for a moment what's going on behind me. There's a cat running around here in here. So when I got to talk with the ladies, that's when I realized this is not just about setting up the hub, although meeting up with them actually underlined the importance of setting up that hub. And when I talked to them about what had happened at that school, so teachers versus administration, and I had written this email and it came from the heart, but it was also very specific about the things that didn't work out. And them actually, well, when I said it out loud, they were like, well done. And that really helped. But because of all the other things, I started thinking about, okay, so if this doesn't work out, so for me, the Masters is going to help me to set up the foundation and really learn about all these kind of things that I need to consider. So these two are linked together. But now also thinking about, well, maybe I shall do the other thing as well. Or instead of the Masters, if that doesn't go through, it does have a purpose too in order to do so. So it's like there's a new route, there's a new path that has opened up. And that's kind of cool. So for you, when you look at your purpose and what you have done and what you have encountered, is there something that made you think, oh, but this is going to help me out? Because that is going to show you that you are aligned with what it is that you want to do. Now, if you know your purpose, you have experienced progress, so you know your plans and goals, then of course it's about prioritizing. What are you going to do first? The thing that didn't really work out very well for me the last couple of months, but I know what to work on now. Certain things have been finished, other things have been finished, and now I'm like, okay, I'm on track now. I know what I want to do and need to do. So what do you have to prioritize? If you've thought about that already, what's one thing that you think is really important? And once you know it, start sharing it with other people, why you want to do it, why it's important to you, when you want to have it done. And find that support, because that's going to help you to pull through and to push through when things are getting hard and challenging. So we talked about the story. So usually those two are linked together. And when usually that story isn't much fun, usually it's for something that has been really hard on you. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, I need to share this with other people. I need to make sure that other people don't have to go through the same experience, or they at least can do it, but then with this tool bag. So is there something that you say that's something that makes sense? And if so, is there a strategy that you can follow? And if you do, are you making progress in that direction? And do you actually know the steps that you are going to take? So how are you going to prioritize all of this? And of course, last but not least, be sure to ask for support. And like I said, nowadays we have AI. Now, I'm not going to say that AI knows all. You have to be very specific to get the right answers. And well, recently I found out that the AI that's listed in the top corner on the left for Google is not Google AI. And I was like, huh? Hang on. There's AI. Yeah, but it's not from Google. It's a totally different supplier. And I was like, okay, I know you're not Gemini, because Gemini sounds totally different. But how? So I'm not entirely sure who's behind the AI which shows up in Google, but I do know it's a very nice one. But again, I have to be very specific, and I do have to check what it says, because otherwise things do not add up. And so each AI has its own purpose. And, just by playing around a little bit, it can give you information pretty quickly. But of course, having human contact can be, well, there's nothing like human contact, of course. But I can understand that you may be limited in time and energy. And depending on who you are talking to and hanging out with, it can either give you or costing you energy. So if we talk about support, I would opt for the one who gives you the most energy and really understands you, where you want to go, and really pushes you to take that next step. Last but not least, I talked about filling the void, right? So I actually posted a little something on Instagram, which was about, let's aim for purpose instead of just doing something because, well, that's what's there. And the reason why we usually do is it has to do with quick fixes. It has to do with getting that endorphin, those endorphins really kicking in really quickly, giving us this high, feeling good. It's comparable with, for most women, eating chocolate or going on a shopping spree. It's what helps you numb if you drink alcohol, or, well, let's not go in that direction. There are other things that you can do to really get that high for a moment. But of course, the question is, how is this helping you long term? Now, I know about the quick fix when it comes to gaming. I am someone who's hyper focused, so I like logical games, and I'm also very curious, so I want to see what's going on. And yes, then I get confronted with advertisements. I don't like that, so I get confronted with money. I don't like that either. But the question, of course, is if you look at it long term, how is it helping you? And there's this game I like to play, and I've noticed that, well, I can go ahead and move ahead, but I always get back to the same things, and it's like, okay, it's always about more money in order to get that quick fix. But when I talk about purpose, we're talking about a very different kind of feeling. And if you are someone who says, I know sort of my purpose, but I'm not sure if I dare to pursue it, then check out the link in the description so you can participate in the Rewrite Your Inner Story Challenge. So that's about the narrative, what you tell yourself, what I talked about earlier. Are you believing what you tell yourself, or have you adopted what other people have said to you and about you, which likely isn't true? And well, if you are someone who has experienced not knowing how to communicate with your employees, then I also have the core handout, which is going to help you to scan how you communicate with the people in your business. And well, when we talk about the core, the essence of your business, if it lines up with what you're doing, or if somehow it's not working out and you want to get more done, but somehow it's like things are slowing down. They are not at the speed that you would like to have it done, and things are just not running unless you do it yourself. Well, if you recognize something, check out the challenge. And then if you want to, there is a level beyond that where I can help you do the scan. But in order to do the scan, I want you to really be able to think about what it is that you believe about yourself, which convictions you have about yourself and others, so we can actually see what we get to work on. Now, if you got inspired by all of this, let me know. I'm very curious about what your findings are. So hit me up, let me know, and I talk to you again next week.